A dusty, dimly lit garage in rural Ohio. Rain is drumming on the corrugated metal roof. Elias, in grease-stained overalls, is wiping a layer of grime off a rusted 1957 Chevy Bel Air. His hands are calloused, reflecting a life of struggle. In the small town of Oakhaven, the name Vance used to mean something, but today it meant two very different things. To Julian Vance, it meant luxury penthouses in Chicago and a seat on every corporate board. To Elias Vance, it meant a leaking roof and a stack of unpaid medical bills. Their father, Thomas Vance, had been a simple man who loved his garage and his two sons. But when he died 5 years ago, the will Julian produced left Elias with nothing but this old, dilapidated garage and a pile of junk cars. Julian, on the other hand, inherited the family's vast timberlands, which he quickly sold to developers for $60 million. "This place is an eyesore, Elias," Julian had sneered during his last visit, stepping out of his pristine black SUV. "I'm putting an end to this. The bank is foreclosing on this property next Friday. You've got 7 days to pack your tools and find a new hole to crawl into." Elias looked his brother in the eye, the grease on his face contrasting with Julian's expensive cologne. "Dad wanted me to keep this garage, Julian. He said the foundation of our family was built here." Julian laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "The foundation was built on dirt, and now I'm turning that dirt into gold. You were always the favorite, but I'm the winner." After Julian left, Elias sat on a crate, defeated. His gaze fell on the 1957 Chevy, his father's pride and joy. Thomas had always told him, "Elias, when the world tries to break you, look under the hood. The answers are always in the engine." Elias grabbed his wrench. He decided to strip the car for parts, hoping to make enough to pay for a motel room, but as he removed the heavy bench seat, he felt something hard taped to the underside of the floorboard. It was a weathered leather satchel. Inside was a videotape and a handwritten letter dated just 2 days before their father passed away. The letter read, "Elias, my son, Julian thinks he's clever. He thinks I don't know about the papers he forced me to sign while I was in the hospital, but I kept a record. In this satchel is a key to a safe deposit box in the downtown Chicago bank, the one Julian thinks he owns. Inside that box isn't money, but the truth about where our family's fortune really came from. Julian didn't inherit that land. He stole it from the people of this town, and he's using my name to cover his tracks. Take this to the light, Elias. Don't let the Vance name be a curse." Elias felt a surge of adrenaline. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was the keeper of a secret that could destroy his brother's empire. But he knew Julian's reach was long. Julian had the police, the local council, and the best lawyers in the state. Just as Elias tucked the satchel under his shirt, a pair of headlights cut through the rain outside. A black sedan had pulled up. 2 men in suits, Julian's security, stepped out. They weren't there for a friendly chat. Elias realized the garage wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was a trap.
The garage is illuminated by the harsh glare of the sedan's headlights. Elias is standing by the rusted Chevy, his heart racing. The sound of heavy footsteps on gravel approaches the door. Elias knew his brother Julian wasn't just a businessman. He was a man who eliminated obstacles, and right now Elias was the biggest obstacle in his path. As the 2 men in suits kicked open the wooden door, Elias grabbed a heavy iron wrench. "Julian wants the satchel, Elias," one of the men said, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "Hand it over, and maybe you get to walk away with your life. This garage is going to burn anyway. Don't be a hero for a dead man's secrets." Elias didn't say a word. He kicked over a canister of oil, creating a slick surface between him and the thugs. As they slipped, Elias dived through the small window in the back of the garage, landing hard in the mud. He didn't look back. He sprinted toward his old beat-up pickup truck parked in the woods. The engine groaned, coughing twice before roaring to life. Behind him, the garage erupted in flames. Julian's men had wasted no time. Elias watched his father's legacy go up in smoke in the rearview mirror. Tears stung his eyes, but they were quickly replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "You just took the last thing I had, Julian," Elias whispered, shifting into gear. "Now, I'm coming for everything you have." The drive from rural Ohio to Chicago was 5 hours of pure adrenaline. Elias stayed off the main highways, knowing Julian would have the state troopers looking for a stolen truck. He drove through back roads, past abandoned farmhouses and sleepy towns, clutching the leather satchel like a shield. He finally reached the outskirts of Chicago at dawn. The towering glass skyscrapers looked like silver giants, a world away from the grease and rust of Oak Haven. Elias felt small, his old truck looking like a relic among the Ferraris and Teslas. He arrived at the First National Bank of Chicago, the very bank Julian had funded with his timberland millions. Elias walked into the marble lobby, smelling of old grease and cheap coffee. The high-end clientele looked at him with disgust, but Elias didn't care. He walked straight to the vault manager. "I need to access safe deposit box 4092, Elias said, sliding his father's old key and his own ID across the counter. The manager's eyes widened as he saw the name Vance. He excused himself and made a frantic call. Minutes later, he returned, followed by 3 armed bank security guards. "Mr. Vance," the manager said, his voice trembling, "I'm afraid there's a hold on that box. Your brother, Julian Vance, filed a legal injunction this morning, claiming you were mentally unfit to handle family assets. We've been instructed to detain you until the authorities arrive." Elias felt the walls closing in. Julian was always one step ahead. But Julian forgot one thing. Elias was a mechanic. He knew how systems worked, and he knew how to find the weak point. "Look at the date on that injunction, and look at the date on this death certificate. My father authorized me as the sole executor of this specific box before Julian ever took control of the estate. If you deny me access, you're not following an injunction. You're committing federal bank fraud against a legal executor." The manager hesitated. The law was clear, even if Julian's money was loud. He signaled the guards to stand down. "5 minutes, Mr. Vance. That's all I can give you." In the cold, quiet room of the vault, Elias opened box 4092. Inside wasn't gold or cash. It was a stack of original land deeds and a series of photographs. The photos showed Julian standing next to toxic waste barrels being buried deep within the Vance timberlands, the same land Julian had sold for millions to build a luxury suburban development. Julian hadn't just stolen the inheritance, he had sold poisoned land to thousands of innocent families. Just as Elias pulled the documents out, the vault door creaked open. It wasn't the bank manager. It was Julian. He stood there in a $3,000 suit, holding a silenced pistol. "You always were the stubborn one, Elias," Julian said, his voice smooth as silk. "Give me the deeds. We can tell the world you had a mental breakdown and tried to rob the bank. I'll put you in the best sanitarium money can buy. Or we can end this right here in the dark." Elias looked at the photos of the poisoned land, then at his brother. "You just didn't kill Dad's dream, Julian. You're killing people who don't even know they're in danger." "People are a resource, just like timber," Julian replied, leveling the gun at Elias's chest. The vault is cold and silent. Julian's gun is aimed at Elias's heart. Outside, the muffled sound of bank sirens grows louder. The tension is at its breaking point.
Julian's finger tightened on the trigger. "Last chance, Elias. Give me the files. I built an empire, and I won't let a grease monkey like you pull it down because of some misplaced morality." Elias didn't flinch. He gripped the photos of the poisoned land tighter. "You didn't build an empire, Julian. You built a graveyard, and every brick you laid was a lie to our father." Just then, the vault door swung wide, but it wasn't the police. It was a group of federal agents from the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and the FBI. Elias hadn't just driven to Chicago. He had used his old truck CB radio to contact a friend from the service who worked in federal enforcement. He had been transmitting their entire conversation in the vault through a hidden mic he'd rigged from a garage walkie-talkie. "Drop the weapon, Mr. Vance," the lead agent shouted. Julian's face went from pale to ghostly white. He realized his confession about the poisoned land and the embezzlement was now on a federal recording. He was handcuffed right there, in the very vault where he thought he was untouchable. As they led him away, Julian looked at his brother with pure hatred. "You still have nothing, Elias. The garage is gone. You're still just a loser in a dirty jumpsuit." Elias watched him go, then looked at the deeds in his hand. "Maybe, but the Vance name is clean again." The trial that followed was the biggest scandal in Ohio's history. The Vance poisoning case dominated the news for months. Elias stood in the courtroom, not as a victim, but as the key witness. He presented the deeds, the photos, and his father's final testimony. The defense tried to paint Elias as a jealous, unstable brother, but the evidence was undeniable. The soil samples from Julian's new luxury development came back positive for toxic waste. The jury didn't even need an hour to reach a verdict. Julian Vance was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison for corporate manslaughter, fraud, and environmental crimes. His assets were seized to pay for the cleanup of the land and to compensate the families he had endangered. 6 months later, Elias stood on the site of his old garage. The charred remains were gone. In its place stood a brand new building, the Thomas Vance Memorial Trade School. Elias hadn't kept the settlement money for himself. He used it to build a school where kids from poor families could learn mechanics, carpentry, and honest trades for free. He walked into the workshop where a group of young students were gathered around a restored 1957 Chevy Bel Air, the same car that had hidden the truth. "Remember," Elias said to the class, his voice steady and proud, "the world might look at your hands and see grease, but as long as your heart is clean, you can fix anything, even a broken legacy." Elias looked up at the sky. The rain had stopped, and for the first time in years, the air felt clear. He wasn't the richest man in the state, but as he looked at the school and the kids, he knew he was the wealthiest man in Oakhaven. Justice Journals tells the stories of those the world tries to bury. We believe that no matter how much money someone has, they can never buy the truth. Whether it's a corrupt CEO or a greedy brother, the light always finds a way through the cracks. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of the underdog, hit that subscribe button. Share this video to honor those who stand up for what's right, even when they have nothing. This is Justice Journals. The truth is the only legacy that lasts. The court is adjourned.